SLAANESH's full roster has finally been revealed, and with that, we can kind of get an idea of how this faction might play on the battlefields of Warhammer 3. So to get straight into it, at the start of the blog it does say that they have unparalleled speed and armor piercing capabilities, so they are going to be a very fast, very rushy, aggressive army. And that is going to be their only playstyle because they seem to have literally no missile units, not one. Not even the Soul Grinder like the other Chaos Gods, which usually have a range attack. So very much a vampire counts type deal going on with the SLAANESH army. No missiles, pure melee carnage. As for their speed, well, just how fast is unparalleled speed? Well, apparently pretty fucking terrifyingly fast. We can notice this from some of the unit cards in this battle footage in the background. You'll see Demonettes here, 54 speed. That is faster than Witch Elves, and not far behind Heavy Cavalry at 66 speed. So those as an infantry, along with the Exalted version, are going to be great at closing that distance quickly on an enemy army. So even if they do have a missile advantage, they won't get much time to use it because you'll be closing that frontline gap very quickly. And even if the enemy army does have missiles, they're probably going to struggle to use them with your 100 speed cavalry, 100 speed chariots, the 95 speed Fiends of SLAANESH monsters, and apparently the Lords as well, as Nakari also has 100 speed. And in this you can see that some of them are buffed up to 110 speed as well, so just ridiculous speed all around basically. And if that wasn't enough, pretty much all of those fast units will have armor piercing damage as well by the looks of it, so they will be absolutely savage damage dealers. However, with that kind of power, speed and armor piercing comes expensive price tags. So if you're going to bring a full army of that, it's probably going to be a very small army, which might struggle in the longer run. Luckily for the SLAANESH army though, there's a bunch of cheaper options in various kinds of Marauders. They'll look something like this, although this is taken from the cavalry versions of the Marauders that are riding the Hellstriders. But you can pretty much just imagine your usual Marauder. There's going to be a sword version, a spear version, and a whip version. So you get some variety to play with on that front line, which is probably going to be very important early game in campaign at least. And for multiplayer, you'll probably be seeing those Marauders as a way to buff up the numbers of an army so that your army isn't too small. So your front line might look like 4 Marauders with maybe a couple of Demonettes behind for some armor piercing damage dealer power. Or maybe against more expensive factions you could get away with just a Demonette front line of 3 or 4 units and just absolutely try to massacre the enemy front line. However, Demonettes have the devastating flanker trait, which means they have double the charge bonus when attacking units in the back or sides, meaning they might be better used as a flanker. The only reason they might not be a superior flanker is depending on the situation and whether the enemy has a lot of missiles, because while they are very fast, they are still going to get shot to crap if there are missiles around, because they have little to no armor. So if they do take the flanking option, it's going to take longer for them to get into a fight, and they may lose 2/3 of their health before they even reach the fight. So it's a case of, would you rather hit the front line, maybe only losing 1/4 of your health, or hit them in the flank but lose 2/3 of your health before you reach melee? So that's going to be a decision you'll have to make depending on what the enemy is putting in your way and how well you think your Demonettes can survive before they actually get into combat. So a similar kind of issue that Witch Elves have always had, but with that devastating flanker ability, it could make that risky flank worthwhile. But perhaps Demonettes don't really need to flank so much because they'll be overshadowed at that job by the even faster units. All the different kinds of chariots, the Hellstriders, the Fiends. They'll be able to get around those flanks even quicker than Demonettes will, and the chariots at least have devastating flanker as well. So again, bigger charge bonus when attacking enemy units in the back or sides. Another question that we might ask though is, can the SLAANESH front line hold units in place long enough for those flankers to get in position and get those flanks? Because if the front line units can't hold long enough and maybe they break quite quickly because they don't have a lot of armor or health, then they won't be able to get those precious flank attacks that they need. But perhaps some of the Marauders maybe will be a little bit better at holding. Some of them have shields and that normally gives more melee defense, so they'll survive a little better, but something to keep in mind. Another devastating flanker unit, the Fiends of SLAANESH. Your more monstery choice. They come with a debuff as well that will reduce enemy melee defense and melee attacks, so they're going to be a bit of a support unit in there as well. Still a good flanker though, got that crazy speed, got devastating flanker. Just going to be another unit that's going to be really difficult to hold on to, and I think that's going to be another theme of when you fight the SLAANESH army, it's going to be, can I hold on to anything to actually kill it? Because the chariots, with 100 speed, they should be able to get in and out of combat super quickly, making them really hard to do any damage to, in theory. Depends on their armor and their melee defense, which probably will both be fairly low, so if you're going to be using them, you will need to micro them quite a lot. So it could make SLAANESH's army maybe quite a hard one to play because of all the constant cycle charging you'll need to be doing with the chariots, with the cavalry, with the Fiends. There could well be a lot to do. There's also some more generic units in there, like the Chaos Spawn. They'll probably pretty much just be usual Chaos Spawn. You've got the Furies, the Chaos Furies that can fly around. So you'll have a little bit of a flying option there, but with the speed of everything else, they're not going to be as useful as probably the other speedy units are, although they might be cheaper if anything. And then we've got some of the big single entity units, like the Soul Grinder of SLAANESH, which just looks like an absolute damage powerhouse, as well as being tremendously hard to kill, apparently. So going to be tanky, going to be a good damage soak. Also one of the few anti-large units in the SLAANESH roster, so could be pretty important in that role too. And for one of our other single entity monster choices, the Keeper of Secrets, who has a couple of spells at its disposal first of all, as well as being a nice mix of speed and weapon strength. And it has that devastating flanker ability as well. So everything is just all about flanking, basically. Apart from the Marauders, they just need to run straight into people, and everything else will do the flanking, it seems. So a fairly simple army in terms of the game plan. Rush forward and flank everybody as much as possible, and cycle charge where possible as well to get that damage done, whilst not taking too much damage yourself in the process. And assisting all of this game plan will be the heroes and lords of the SLAANESH army. As for magic, you've got that Lore of SLAANESH with its unique new spells to be used, and the Lore of Shadows seems to be pretty common in this army. Looks like there should be some support abilities as well to maybe help your units survive or to do a little more damage as well. All in aid of trying to get that big flanking game plan, lots of flanking damage, lots of double charge bonuses, all in aid of killing enemies quickly. And as for the unique faction abilities that every Chaos faction has, when you do a certain thing, you gain abilities that can be used for SLAANESH. You gain these points when you kill routing units. So you're going to need to break the units first, which should be easy if you do a lot of flanking, and then kill the units as they're running away, and that is going to get you those faction-specific spells that you can use throughout the battle. Given the blistering speed of everything, this shouldn't be too hard. And on top of all this damage-dealing power and pain and misery that they can cause, we can't forget about big boy Nakari, the legendary lord, who looks absolutely terrifying in his own right. He's incredibly fast, he's going to be a big damage dealer, he can heal himself potentially if units die nearby him. He also brings a melee attack and melee defense debuff to nearby enemy units as well to make them die just that little bit quicker. So he is going to be an absolute problem to deal with, I'm sure. However, if you look at his stats, which you can see at 1 minute 24 seconds of this video, you'll notice he only has 5 armor, which probably means that missiles are going to absolutely shred him a new one. And that seems indicative of the SLAANESH army overall. They do not have a lot of armor, and thus missiles could be very dangerous to them, and taking damage in general is going to be something that they do pretty quickly. So they're kind of the opposite of the Nurgle army, where Nurgle wants to win the war of attrition and outlast everybody and just absorb the damage and heal up and just take all the damage whilst slowly putting out a bit of damage against the enemy and wearing them down. SLAANESH is the opposite. He wants to do all of the damage super quickly, and those long wars of attrition are not going to do the SLAANESH army any favors, and they probably won't win those kind of fights. So making good use of your units is going to be very important, and as I mentioned, no missile units, so Vampire Counts vibes. If you're used to playing the Vampire Counts, you'll probably feel somewhat at home with this army, in the sense that you're never relying on missiles to do the work for you. And I feel like it'll maybe be a bit more kind of Beastmen-y vibes for this faction, where they're quite light in armor as well, they don't have a lot of leadership. Winning the fight quite fast and early is very important for them. If they get into a long war of attrition, they'll usually fail. Also, with a lack of missile units usually comes a lack of anti-large capabilities. Even though they might have some spear units which will be anti-large, most large units will be able to outrun them and simply run away from them if they want to, which means SLAANESH could have a hard time maybe dealing with single entities, dealing with cavalry. You're only going to have that Soul Grinder as a kind of dedicated anti-large unit. You do have some Marauder spears, but no anti-large cavalry or other monsters or monstrous infantry or anything, so going to be interesting to see how they deal with large units without those missiles and without any seemingly slightly more versatile anti-large units. You got the Soul Grinder, you got the spears, but Those are going to be kind of easy to evade, and you can only really probably bring one Soul Grinder, so yeah, that will be a concern for you Slaanesh players. At least this is what I'm taking away from what we've seen of the roster so far. Until we get some stats and things and we can really see how things look as a whole, it's hard to say. But either way, Slaanesh's army is looking pretty savage overall. That serious speed, serious damage, going to be a real glass cannon faction that are either going to smash their enemies quick and fast and have the battle over soon, or they're going to struggle to get their damage done quick enough and they'll slowly dwindle off and lose because of their lack of endurance. But that will of course be determined by how well you play them. Either way, it's exciting to see yet a slightly different playstyle again for one of these Chaos Gods. None of them really look the same. CA have done a good job, and of course Games Workshop have done a good job of making them all very different in terms of how they play. So something for everybody. Should be fun to face. It'll give us lots of variety in the different factions that we're facing. It's not going to feel like we're all fighting the same army over and over again. They're very versatile and different and unique, so plenty to look forward to. But there we go. There's the SLAANESH Army, the final army we've been waiting to see for Warhammer 3. Which one are you going to play first? I'm going to drop a poll in the link of the description, and I'm also going to post it on the YouTubes and the Discords and everything so we can get a full idea to see which faction people are most excited for. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the future.